Enkrid's will was neither complete nor perfect. It was a fragment, a piece apart, and yet it was still will. This was why Marcus was astonished, and why the ferry company commander returned immediately from whatever trip or vacation she had taken. The ferry company commander didn't deny that she came back to enjoy the sight while she was at the bath.
It looks good.
Her words were an acknowledgement.
Anything else you want to say?
No.
She simply came to confirm if what Enkrid had done was genuine. It's a strange thing, Enkrid thought. He knew what he did was impressive, but was it really something to make such a fuss over? Even Enkrid himself knew it was just a part, a fragment. Yet he felt joy and exhilaration from it. Nothing else could give him this much satisfaction. Feeling fulfilled, he also longed for more.
If this is just the beginning.
It meant he could go further. It felt as if a faded, torn dream had been stitched together into something magical.
No, it actually is like that.
He scratched his cheek as he thought. The curse of repeating today stitched the torn fabric of dreams together. Enkrid didn't deny that.
Well then.
The ferry company commander turned away. She walked out into the pouring rain. Enkrid, who was staring blankly, ran a hand through his hair. He thought that the ferry had a peculiar personality. No matter how nimble a ferry, avoiding the rain was impossible, and she was soaked through. As she walked, Sinar checked the wound on her side.
It hurts.
With some medicine and a day or two of rest, it would be fine. Though not completely painless, she could still move. The fairy, adjusting her wound, thought of Enkrid, his blue eyes staring at her from the bath. She liked his face from the start. So was he a target from the beginning? No, he was just a subject of a joke. But now he had become someone she found quite enticing.
It would be nice to bring him in.
But that wouldn't be as easy as she thought. She had just handled a task for the guild created to restore the kingdom's language. She believed it would help with her future and what she desired. If it wasn't helpful, there would be no reason for her to be here. So, after finishing a tough and rough job, she returned to hear that Enkrid had fainted. No, to be precise, he had fainted but now endured without fainting. Those who didn't understand wouldn't get it, but those who knew understood.
Willpower.
Will can only be blocked by will. Without comparable strength, resistance is impossible, to endure beyond resistance.
Will.
That man, the one who had been a subject of jokes. Will? Sinar was so shocked she couldn't tend to her wound, wasn't it worth it? She also had eyes. Even if she couldn't recognize talent, she knew Enkrid's condition. Even if struck by luck multiple times, it was impossible. Yet, despite any hardship or crisis, he overcame and stood up every time. Watching that, how could she not be delighted?
I'd like to show him to the idiots back home.
She half meant it when she said she wanted to take him to her parents. Fairy jokes often hide true intentions within.
It is amusing.
Sinar moved her red lips and spoke to herself. Shah, the rain, relentless, poured down. The sound of thunder mixed in. The fairy unconsciously smiled. The work was tedious, painful, and its end was bleak, but it was necessary. Rarely had she smiled while doing such work, but now, because of a certain man, she smiled easily. Even though she found it quite amusing, she was satisfied with the present moment. Was that why she hadn't left this place, even though she should have long ago?
Making various excuses.
Perhaps so. The fairy Sinar continued walking. Neither the pain nor her aspirations could hold her back right now. She simply celebrated inwardly. She celebrated what Enkrid had accomplished. For now, that was enough.
Seems like she's hurt.
Enkrid had eyes. His sharpened sense of smell picked up the scent of blood mingling with the distinctive aroma of steam. Even if he could tell by sight, others surely noticed as well.
Seems like you've fallen for her.
Rem spoke up.
For what?
For the commander, I mean. If you've got something like that, you've got the strength of a beast.
Rem said this while looking at Enkrid's legs as he had just risen from the bath and was rinsing off sweat and other residues.
Crazy bastard.
When Enkrid responded, Rem shook his head and said,
I give up. I can't beat that.
He's a madman, no doubt about it. Enkrid kicked at Rem's side. Rem, of course, dodged it.
Even when hurt, she comes to see you. She is something else.
Ragna added.
You should open a salon with me, seriously, especially that.
Kreis also commented, looking at Enkrid's legs.
We're in front of the battalion commander.
Enkrid warned them. Marcus laughed heartily beside him.
I'm envious of that too.
What exactly he was envious of was unclear, and so they all washed up and started heading back.
Looks like she's been through a rough time, seeing that fairy hurt. But it doesn't seem to be a serious injury, so you don't need to worry about your fiancé.
Jackson said as they neared their quarters. Enkrid corrected him.
She's not my fiancée.
Yes.
Jackson replied indifferently as he opened the door to the quarters. Dunbachel and Esther turned their gaze towards them, and at some point, Finn had also returned.
Is it true?
Finn asked. Enkrid knew the question was directed at him. Was it true about Will? Did he really withstand the intimidation? It was a question about the truth of the rumors.
Just lucky.
He didn't have much else to say.
Wow.
Finn could only gape in astonishment.
At this rate, won't you become a real knight?
From the first time she saw him, Finn never thought Enkrid was a normal human, but this was real. Will, Enkrid didn't respond to Finn's amazement, dreaming of becoming a knight, striving for that goal. He had never thought about whether he would achieve it or not. He just crawled forward. That progress had now borne fruit. As everyone settled down to sleep, there were trivial jokes, Rem's teasing of Dunbachel, and Enkrid's question to Finn about where she had been, to which Finn replied with nonsense about hanging out with language-obsessed lunatics. Finn shook her head, saying she couldn't give more details, and no one seemed particularly interested. Enkrid had asked, but didn't listen closely.
Why ask if you don't care? Why doesn't anyone here pay attention to me, especially when there's such a lovely woman in the room?
Finn said. Her hair might be a bit messy, but she wasn't unattractive. Thanks to the repeating day, he didn't remember the face of the female thief from the Black Blade Bandits anymore, but compared to her, Finn was definitely a beauty. Esther snorted beside him. It was clearly a derisive laugh.
Even the panther's laughing at you. Go wash up and get some sleep.
Rem laughed and teased, and Finn cursed as she blamed the pouring rain.
Damn rain.
With those words, Finn was about to go out to wash. As she reached for the door, Jackson grabbed her wrist. Esther, who had gotten up, stood at her feet. Rem, Ragna, and Auden also turned their heads. Enkrid blocked her path. Even Dunbachel, with her beast-like instincts, twitched her shoulders and bared her fangs.
What's going on?
Chryse, the only one who didn't understand, asked.
A visitor.
Enkrid replied. This was the border guard's barracks. It wasn't an inn room in the city, and uninvited guests couldn't come easily, and yet there was a visitor.
Can I see him for a moment?
While everyone was watching the door, a voice was heard. Enkrid stepped forward and said,
My guest.
When he opened the door, there stood a middle-aged man, soaked like a wet mouse, a rapier swordsman, once a guard for the Rockfried merchant group. Earlier today, he had shown his intimidation to Enkrid, and had been so shocked by Enkrid's rejection that he could only utter a single exclamation repeatedly.
You've come to your senses now, I see.
Rem sneered from behind. Maybe it was a racial trait. Anyway, his tongue never stopped. The rapier swordsman ignored Rem's words.
I brave the rudeness to see you once more.
He got straight to the point. The incident earlier had clearly shocked him greatly. Just looking at his current state made that easy to understand. Soaked by the rain, his eyes had dark circles, and his cheeks had hollowed in just half a day.
As much as you want.
Enkrid didn't refuse.
Isn't it a hassle since you just washed?
Chryse asked a practical question. Enkrid shook his head lightly and answered.
It's no hassle at all.
If such things were bothersome, he should have given up the sword long ago. The opponent before him was rare. He could wield intimidation and seemed to possess considerable skill. Enkrid had already planned to suggest sparring again tomorrow.
I have to leave tonight due to some matters. I apologize for coming like this, knowing it's impolite.
He had secretly scaled the barracks wall in the middle of the night. Of course, he had avoided the watchful eyes of the guards. Quite a skill. Regardless, Enkrid decided to increase the training intensity of his troops. Allowing someone to scale the wall so easily was unacceptable. Despite that, he was inwardly pleased at this moment.
Here we go again.
No matter what Rem said from behind, someone had come to find him for a duel. Wasn't it Ibaran who was constraining him? He wasn't a nobody. The shock from that nobody was so great that even though he forgot Eden Molson's name, he remembered the 3 letters of Ibaran. The opponent was a wielder of will, which in some sense meant he was a true junior knight. The rain hadn't stopped yet. Though it had lessened, getting wet was inevitable. Enkrid, who had just washed, was drenched again. He didn't care. What's a bit of wetness? Standing in front of the dedicated training ground, the ground was muddy. The soil, which usually reduced the risk of injury from falls, was now slippery and gripping their feet. But the ground wasn't a big issue for the two standing there.
I'm going alone.
Enkrid said as he stepped forward. Everyone roughly agreed, but Jackson fundamentally distrusted humans.
If things go wrong.
They strike from behind. That's why Jackson disappeared alone from the quarters. Rem, having noticed this, didn't move, and neither did the others. Esther sensed a peculiar change in Enkrid's aura.
What is it?
She knew how to handle weapons, but unless it was related to magic, she wouldn't usually sense things this sensitively. Has the power that blurred her curse weakened? No, that wasn't it. Has his attitude changed? He was still the same crazy man as before, yet Esther felt a strange change. However, that wasn't a reason to stand in the pouring rain and watch. Esther closed her eyes. She was tired. Recently, she had transformed into a human several times, honing her skills in the world of magic. Thanks to those experiences, she had also learned about the world. No longer a wizard trapped in her own world, she had rolled in the battlefield as a panther. What she realized was this: in human affairs, you never know what might suddenly happen. Therefore, it's essential to always be prepared. Wizards are, by nature, a preparing sort. Esther rested her head on her legs. There was no way Enkrid would die, so she didn't worry. She immersed herself in her world.
Since the wildcat is gone, I'll just sleep.
Rem said.
Yeah, really? Jackson disappeared quickly?
Kreis, who noticed late, replied. Even though they had agreed to spend their time separately in the quarters, it wasn't long before Rem got up.
It's kind of boring.
Those words reflected everyone's thoughts. Even with an excuse, they would go to watch. Standing opposite each other in the training ground, Enkrid once again rejected the intimidation.
It's real.
The rapier swordsman said. He was surprised again, naturally. Who would have thought someone would realize will and return like this? Meanwhile, a trickle of blood flowed from the left side of Enkrid's nose.
It's easier than using a sword, but
Still, it wasn't something he could use recklessly yet. However, he felt something.
The more you use it, the more you'll train it.
The rapier swordsman remarked. Seeing the faint nosebleed mixed with the rain, Enkrid felt the same way. The more he used it, the more he would train it. He was already feeling it in his body. The two stood watching each other. For a while, as the rain started pouring down harder, the rapier swordsman, staring directly into Enkrid's blue eyes, spoke. The words that came out were,
I cannot reveal my affiliation, but I am a member of a renowned knightly order. This is all I can say for now, but do you have any thoughts of following me?
The pouring rain filled the space between them. The rain, which seemed like it might stop, poured harder and thunder roared. A bright blue lightning bolt lit up the sky and illuminated the world. The rapier swordsman's eyes met Enkrid's.
not a sparring match.
He hadn't come to fight, but to measure and win him over again. Moreover, he said he was a member of a renowned knightly order. In other words,
Join the knightly order, I will illuminate your path.
it was an invitation to a path where he could become a knight.
It's not a duel.
It was a proposal, an offer.
This seems to be happening often these days.
Didn't Marcus also mention it?
He asked me to become a battalion commander.
He had declined, and now it's about becoming a knight. Enkrid looked at the man in front of him. At first glance, he didn't seem to be a noble of Norillia. So, is that a problem? Not at all, it wouldn't be a problem in the slightest. Even if someone was born in Norillia, those from rural villages wouldn't know or care who the ruler or nobles are. They only care about those who keep their bellies full and don't cause them trouble. Especially since they grow up never having seen the ruler, they consider the lord governing their area as the king. This is typical for people who grow up in such villages. Thus, Enkrid's loyalty to the country wasn't particularly strong. So, the reason he wasn't responding immediately wasn't out of loyalty. It wasn't because he was reluctant to receive help either. If he hadn't received advice and help, he wouldn't have come this far. In that regard, Enkrid was grateful to Rem, Auden, Ragna, Jackson, and even Kreis. But aside from all that, Enkrid felt honestly deflated after hearing the proposal. How should he put it? His heart, which had been racing, suddenly cooled. He set out thinking he'd see the real skill of the man standing before him. That's why he didn't care about the pouring rain.
Should I follow even though you haven't disclosed where?
You won't regret it.
His eyes gleamed, believing in his words sincerely. Enkrid knew that even if the other party had no ill intentions, it wouldn't necessarily benefit him. Even an unintentional stone can kill a frog. Whether the stone was thrown with good intentions, bad intentions, or to chase away a nearby snake, a stone is a stone. Above all,
Do I want to join the knighthood?
Enkrid looked up at the sky and asked himself. The pouring rain didn't seem like it would stop any time soon. For autumn rain, it was quite heavy. The thought was brief. It wasn't a matter to ponder for long. Becoming a knight and joining a knighthood were different matters. It had always been so. Admiring the Red Cape Knights didn't mean he'd give up everything to wear that cape. It was the same now.
I refuse.
Refuse? If it's because I didn't disclose the affiliation, reconsider. No one can offer a better path than I can. Especially if you aim higher, you'll need to go where such people gather.
Do you have to join a knighthood to become a knight? Not necessarily, but the chances are higher. Knights can also be found among mercenaries and bandits. But the fact remains that most knights come from knight orders. At least, there are more opportunities. To a soldier from a remote fiefdom with nothing, it would seem like a golden opportunity.
It's a better place than the Red Cape Knights. I guarantee it.
The rapier swordsman reiterated, but Enkrid didn't nod.
A knight order, huh?
Sure, it could be an opportunity, but can you achieve such skills simply by training and practicing within a knight order? Can you reach where you want to be? Can you become a knight? Enkrid looked back at the path he had taken. Reflection was part of him. Looking back, what was there? What had brought him this far? It was clear that a worry-free, given optimal environment wasn't what he needed. Additionally,
I haven't seen the end of my subordinates yet.
because he achieved the present by accepting from them, he couldn't ignore it. Just as he was about to refuse again.
Do you know what is the most forbidden thing to touch among the fairy's belongings?
Where did that come from? Even with Enkrid's heightened senses, the presence was vague until they spoke. Before he could refuse, the voice of the ferry company commander rang out. Has she washed? Her face was brighter than before. She was dressed in casual clothes. Although the sleeves were long, she wore a thin shirt that fluttered in the wind. Then,
Fiancé.
it was Jackson. Was he answering the fairy's question? What are those two doing over there? Both Enkrid and the rapier swordsman turned their heads.
That's right, fiancé. Do you know what happens if you treat a fairy's fiancé carelessly?
Execution, right?
Rem also appeared. He acted like he wouldn't come out of the quarters.
My lord, my father, I repeat, please do not take my precious company commander.
Auden also came out, praying. When did these guys start watching? They were gathered on one side of the training ground. Around Auden there were others. Auden praying, Ragnar watching quietly, Rem grinning while exuding a killing intent, and Jackson beside him. At Jackson's feet was Esther, and the golden-eyed beast folk also stepped forward.
If you go, I'll go with you.
It was Dunbachel's words. She was always sincere, never speaking indirectly, so wherever Enkrid went, she would follow. The ferry company commander stood a step away from them, staring directly at Enkrid. Lastly, Finn, who seemed to have come out late, grumbled as she spoke.
You said you were just watching, so are you going?
The last question was directed at him. Enkrid scratched his head. When he thought about it, despite having done nothing for them, they stood up for him. They fought, taught, and stayed by his side until now.
Who am I?
What is a knight? He believes it's someone who upholds honor. What is a knight? He believes it's someone with conviction. What is a knight? He believes it's someone who establishes justice. That's the knightly path Enkrid believes in, follows, and aspires to become. To him, this is honor, conviction, and justice. The loyalty to his companions is equal to those three.
If you're not going to fight, go back. I'm not joining your knight order.
Enkrid had already decided on the path to becoming a knight. Here in this place, moving from the present to the next.
Well, I didn't plan on stopping you from leaving anyway.
At those words, Rem spoke up with something nonsensical. Why was someone who wouldn't stop him here?
I'm better.
Ragnar said something out of the blue.
I mean, I'm better than any knight order.
Then he added, it was an arrogant and boastful statement, but Enkrid had nothing to say since he knew Ragnar's genius. Odin just smiled gently.
It's your choice, brother.
Didn't he just pray to the gods, asking not to take his commander? Despite saying that, they would have accepted it if Enkrid had said he was leaving. They were truly fascinating people. In any case, he had made his decision, chosen his path, and had no intention of looking back. That was Enkrid. Thunder struck again, and blue lightning passed overhead, illuminating the surroundings. The rapier swordsman who had been staring at Enkrid nodded.
It doesn't seem like you'll change your mind.
He gave up. The swordsman dusted off his hands. He traveled across the continent, finding promising individuals and guiding them to his foundation. Under normal circumstances, he would have revealed his affiliation.
I thought you'd refuse.
So he didn't reveal it. Even if he had, nothing would have changed. Still, should he mention it just in case? It was pointless. Of all the people he had seen, Enkrid's talent was the least, but from the beginning he had always valued that look in his eyes. That's why he wanted to bring him along. At that time, it wasn't the sword he noticed, but something else.
Be careful of the Swiftblade. He's not a tame one.
Got it.
Enkrid nodded.
Don't overuse will. If a child who has just started walking keeps running without rest, their knees and ankles will be ruined. First, strengthen your ankles and then run.
I will.
Good advice, an added comment.
Well then, I'll be leaving now. Don't know if we'll meet again.
It was an unnecessarily honest farewell.
See you again.
Enkrid responded accordingly. The rapier swordsman turned away. In the end, there was no duel. That was the only regret.
Are you disappointed you didn't get to fight now?
Rem pointed it out accurately. Enkrid, feeling that regret, turned his fighting spirit towards Rem.
Since we're already wet? Well, damn fine. Just so you know, I won't be going easy on you like before. I've never gone easy on you. Of course. Damn that tongue of yours.
On a rainy night, Enkrid stood with his sword. Rem drew his axe in front of him. Ignoring the downpour and the darkness, the two charged at each other through the rain. In the end, Enkrid lost again.
Now I really can't go easy on you,
Rem said, standing in the pouring rain. At least, thanks to both of them fighting with some restraint, there was no bloodshed.
Rem.
He can go further. There seemed to be signs that he was somehow limiting himself. Enkrid didn't ask about it, even though he sensed it. It was something Rem had to handle himself. Enkrid was only determined to stay true to his beliefs, justice, and honor, and if loyalty to his comrades meant staying here, he would honor that loyalty.
What about the broken axe?
Enkrid's sword was sturdy. A deliberate swing of his sword had broken one of the axe blades. Rem used that as a decoy to secure his victory.
Aren't you going to buy me another one?
I have no krona.
Neither do I.
Recently, he had generously given some to Krace for doing something commendable. He didn't even have enough krona to get a new set of armor. From the start, neither Enkrid nor Rem were the type to save and use their krona wisely. Naturally, their eyes turned toward the barracks.
Big eyes.
If they had no krona, they would just bother Krace, known as Big Eyes. Rem decided this, and Enkrid didn't stop him.
Will starts now.
It was Ragna, who had been watching the duel, speaking. For someone who loved to laze around, it was surprising to see him out in the rain. From his feet, thoroughly soaked Esther jumped into his arms.
I know.
He knew because he felt and realized it. He was pondering whether to go back to the bathhouse or just clean up quickly and sleep.
Commander.
It was coming from the entrance of the barracks. It was already midnight. A soldier was calling for him. Everyone's eyes turned that way. Even Rem, who had gone inside to pester Krace, came back out.
You're all wet. Why don't you dry off a bit before coming in?
Amidst Krace's grumbling,
There's trouble.
the soldier had come looking for Enkrid. What could it be this time? As the rapier swordsman was leaving, his original companions joined him.
It was a wasted trip, wasn't it?
Mockingly.
Well, as long as it was fun.
Are you sure? But are you just going to leave that guy alone? He seemed to be up to something.
Everyone had their own specialties. The one they were referring to was the crazy bastard known as Swiftblade. The swordsman stroked his chin, a habit that persisted even after his beard was gone.
He'll manage on his own.
It wasn't really his concern, and it wasn't as if Enkrid could be easily dealt with by someone like Swiftblade.
Though he does have a bit of cunning in him.
Was it real, though?
A subordinate asked. The rapier swordsman nodded without hesitation.
It's a talent I can't see.
High praise. In truth, he had died and come back countless times to reach this point, but they wouldn't know that.
Oh.
The subordinate was surprised. Such words were rare from the superior they served.
So, Where are we heading now?
Let's go back to the Empire.
Hearing the swordsman's words, the subordinates' faces brightened. Finally, they were returning. The half-blood giant stared blankly at the pouring rain. As she wiped off the moisture and sat by the window, watching the rain pour down, Enkrid's words came to mind.
Tomorrow, too.
Not today, but tomorrow. Not the present, but the future. Is it okay to live thinking about such things? Is there no problem with that? Such questions swirled inside her. As a cultist, a member of the sacred cult of the demon realm, her duty was clear.
Hey.
So she had to be shaken by that man's words now. Even though her heart didn't stir at all, she had to agree forcibly. The man called Swiftblade leaned against her doorframe and spoke.
I was never interested in sparring from the start. Weren't you similar?
Swiftblade was quick-witted and had a good memory. The half-blood giant had a history with him, therefore he knew her true identity. Hence the proposal. The cult wasn't a group that revered brute force, and if she had come this far, her purpose was clear.
Let's kill him. That's what we have to do, right?
That's right, the half-blood giant knew it too. Yet her head didn't nod easily, her lips didn't move, but it was something she had to do, so she nodded.
If you want to survive, endure. If you want to survive, kill.
The teachings of the cult were still vivid in her mind. Until she died, she was solely a cultist, solely a warrior of the sacred cult of the demon realm. She acted exactly as those words dictated. She agreed to Swiftblade's proposal.
I have a plan.
Swiftblade took a step closer. A foul, rotten smell emanated from his mouth. The contents that came out of his mouth smelled just as rotten. Thus, the plan began. Swiftblade wandered around the castle gate and found a soldier.
Hey, friend.
Huh?
It was raining so hard that the oiled cloak seemed pointless. It was dark all around. It was a day when visibility was naturally reduced. Even lighting a torch under a roof didn't help much on such a dark day. It was natural for visibility to be limited. Bell stepped into the light to identify the face of the person calling him. The other person did the same. It was a familiar face. What was his name? Come to think of it, no one asked for names when they entered the territory. One thing was certain, he was a guest of Enkrid, a guest who used a sword and sparred while staying at the inn. Also, he was someone Marcus had told him to keep an eye on.
But I will keep moving forward.
Swiftblade smiled broadly. That smile was somehow irritating, but Bell didn't say anything.
Do you have some time?
The guy with the dirty smile asked. Bell was on patrol duty. He didn't have time. What kind of nonsense is this? Just as he was about to reply. At the sudden sound, he turned his head sharply backward. A large warrior stood behind him, the half-blood giant warrior. Another familiar face. Bell had watched Enkrid's sparring sessions many times. As he confirmed the cold, hardened face of the female warrior, just as he was about to open his mouth to shout for an ambush or surprise attack, he felt the cold touch of a blade on his neck. The speed was too fast to react. That was the last of Bell's consciousness. Something hit the back of his head, and when he opened his eyes again, his hands and feet were tightly bound. His entire body was soaked, and he wasn't alone.
O Lord in heaven.
A prayer came from right next to him. It was a middle-aged woman, tear-streaked, mumbling. She was the mother of a comrade who sold spiced jerky. Not just her, there were a few other familiar faces.
Vanessa? Damn it, you're finally awake?
There was also the rough innkeeper. Her tone was still harsh, but her eyes were wavering, showing signs of anxiety. Bell looked around again. His vision was blurry, but not so much that he couldn't recognize people. Looking around, he saw that dozens of people, including himself, were all tied up. And then,
If you resist, I'll kill them one by one.
the voice came from a distance, and Bell realized that he was in some sort of hut. He recognized a few familiar items. An old leather sunshade, some rotten leather pieces that smelled musty, and a fireplace that had been dead for years. It was a hunter's hut abandoned outside the castle gate in a remote area. In other words, a deserted hut. What was going on? Familiar faces, all tied up, were confined in the hunter's hut. Sunlight streamed in through the window. Bell, who was lying sideways, tensed his abs.
Hup.
After straightening his body, he looked out the window. He saw the back of the man he had seen just before he fainted.
That bastard.
His head was still throbbing. When he got up, he felt something sticky next to his face, indicating he had bled a bit. He wasn't dead, but his head was cracked. Beyond the man's back, he could vaguely see the shape of a person, but not clearly. However, he instantly recognized who it was from the voice he heard.
Well, you seem like you're about to die too.
It was Enkrid's voice. Belle quickly grasped the situation. It was a hostage situation. At the same time, Belle wondered if it would make any difference. It was a world of kill or be killed. In such a world, would Enkrid die for these dozens of people? That seemed highly unlikely. So why was this still going on? Questions continued to swirl in Belle's mind. He would have to keep watching to understand what was happening. Swiftblade's scheme was neither extraordinary nor brilliant. It was simple and annoying, that's all.
I said I'll kill them all.
From the first day he arrived at the border guard, he observed his surroundings. He watched and understood. Here are a few things he learned. First,
Damn it, they put a watchdog on me right away.
there were eyes on him, thanks to Kreis reporting him to the higher-ups on the first day. Because of that, Marcus assigned people to watch him. That greatly displeased Swiftblade. Putting that aside, what he found out later was that Enkrid had unknowingly grown close to the people around him. Even if he took them hostage and demanded Enkrid's life, he would probably just snort in derision. A hostage must hold enough value to the other party to be meaningful.
They're not family nor lovers.
It's not like they are hidden children or anything. Just acquaintances, that's all.
I'm not asking for much, just that much. Move everyone back and stay here alone.
That's why Swiftblade proposed conditions that the other party could accept. Honestly, he believed that if he fought alongside that crazy half-blood giant, they could kill Enkrid. What's the problem?
Those bastards, right?
From the guy snickering while stroking his axe, to the bear-like man who seemed 2 heads taller than him, to the quiet one who wouldn't be surprised if he started swinging a sword at any moment.
Especially you, don't disappear. If I can't see you, I'll kill this woman right away.
He was speaking to Jackson. Swiftblade already had a villager in his arms. She was the woman who made marmalade. A sharp knife was pressed against her neck. A drop of blood trickled down. Enkrid didn't remember her name, but Kreis did.
If you even touch a hair on Jury's finger, you won't die peacefully.
Kreis was rarely serious. Since she made excellent marmalade with those hands, her fingertips must be especially important. Jury was pale and unable to speak a word. Frozen as if she had been dipped in wax, she was dragged around by Swiftblade's rough grip. Even watching this, Enkrid didn't show any urgency. This made Swiftblade's smile even wider.
That bastard's eyes are so annoying.
If things go as he wants, he'll gouge out those eyes first.
Is what I'm asking difficult? No, right? If you're not confident, well, that's a different story.
It was still a crude provocation. Swiftblade's condition was simple. Move the people back, leave only Enkrid, and then?
If you can take us both down one by one, it's over, right?
If he did that, he'd supposedly release the hostages. It was clearly nonsense, but he wasn't asking Enkrid to die or to cut off an arm. If he didn't agree, Swiftblade would kill people without hesitation. It was an ambiguous situation. Can't you at least meet this condition?
That's what he's aiming for.
Logically, it made no sense. He was asking Enkrid to face 2 enemies after moving his allies back. What if both of them attacked to kill him?
Then can he handle the aftermath?
What if he got seriously injured? Even if they moved back, Rem and the others wouldn't just sit quietly. They'd pursue them immediately. Did Swiftblade have another plan? How many years had he survived by outsmarting others with less skill? In terms of intuition, Enkrid was second to none. He read Swiftblade's intention. Not only did he read it, but he also saw beyond it. Beyond the 5 senses, his 6th sense spoke to him.
Besides the escape plan, there must be something hidden.
Next to him, a half-blood giant, clad in armor with a sword and shield, stood idly. Handling that warrior alone was a challenge, no. It used to be a challenge. Before, it would have been impossible, especially before mingling with Shepherd Pell.
Maybe it'll work.
She was calm and composed. Her eyes reflected the same. Seeing Enkrid's eyes, Swiftblade's smile deepened. From the first time he saw him, his smile had been insufferable, but he had let it go, wanting to glimpse the hidden skills. Enkrid thought this was his responsibility. He was about to respond in agreement.
Bullshit.
What a powerful voice.
Huh? Who's eavesdropping on my thoughts?
Rem spouted nonsense from behind. It was inside the abandoned hut. Belle's shout, if he keeps that up, he might die first? Enkrid was a bit worried. Everything had happened because of him, and he knew all these faces. It wasn't a battlefield, and if someone got stabbed here, it would be troubling. So he wished they would keep their mouths shut. Swiftblade's face now looked less like a smile and more like a twisted mask. Doesn't it hurt his facial muscles to smile like that?
Haha, insufferable brother, let's have a conversation instead of this. The scriptures say, turn back those who are on the wrong path, so look behind you.
With incomprehensible words, he extended his hand, naturally guiding the attention backward. Following this, Jackson subtly lifted his left foot. Rem let his left hand hang loose, and only Ragna yawned and watched.
Cut the crap.
Swiftblade didn't fall for it, Enkrid decided. What else could he do? It didn't seem like a life-threatening matter.
Everyone, go back, wash your feet, and rest.
You're going to do it alone?
I think I can handle it.
It was something he used to say often. If he had said this before, Rem would have sarcastically mocked him. He would have asked if he was going off to die alone. But now, having sparred with him just before coming here,
Tiske.
Rem swallowed his words. He had indeed improved. He was no longer someone to be underestimated. Moreover, he had awakened a part, a fragment of will. He was now qualified to join the only knightly order in the kingdom, the Red Cape Knights. Well, joining the order required meeting various conditions. He had even received an offer to join the order from some naive members.
So what now?
Enkrid nodded toward Swiftblade, whose eyes were twisted with malice. He sent everyone far back to a place where they couldn't be seen. Swiftblade never let go of the hostage. If it weren't for Jury being held, Enkrid would have made a move much earlier. From the beginning, he had a knife hidden under his hand. He was ready to use a technique called the Tangam style. If he threw it now, Swiftblade would use the hostage as a shield.
Should I kill the hostage and charge in?
The hostage would die, but it would be a way to subdue the opponent. Sacrificing one to cleanly resolve the situation. That was also an option. But then someone would die. A resident of his domain, someone he was supposed to protect, would die because of his actions. He wouldn't feel much guilt over it. He had no habit of self-torment over things that had already happened, but standing by idly while he could prevent something didn't suit him either.
I never swore to protect the people of the border guard, but they are in my domain,
Enkrid said, drawing his sword.
I can't just stand by and watch.
The rain had stopped. Under the clear blue sky, under the shining azure sky, there stood Enkrid with his sword drawn. There is a will evident in his words and actions. Because of this will, Enkrid's words carried weight. Everyone had retreated. He said he would protect. If he said so, he would do so. What if he failed? That was a matter to think about later. The last to step back was Ragna. Before leaving, he silently stared at the Swiftblade, and only after uttering a word did he turn away.
We'll meet again later.
The Swiftblade ignored him. Enkrid thought it was not good to ignore that.
It's rare for Ragna to say we'll meet again later.
It was not a common sight. As people withdrew and disappeared from view, Enkrid was left alone. The Swiftblade spoke again in a tone devoid of laughter.
Impressive, really.
The smile vanished from the Swiftblade's face. He seemed indifferent. Enkrid, still holding his sword, silently observed.
Let's begin,
the Swiftblade said. A brief silence fell. Nothing happened. It could have been embarrassing, but the Swiftblade just twisted his mouth into a smile again. Looking at his opponent's face, Enkrid thought it looked like a forced smile. The original plan started with the half-blood giant charging. Then the Swiftblade would attack, exploiting the opening. But the half-blood giant didn't move.
A conversation.
Enkrid asked casually, intending to alleviate the awkwardness, but the intent was not conveyed.
Shut up, damn it.
The Swiftblade glared at the half-blood giant. The giant stood still, helmet on. He didn't look sideways. They could kill him if they joined forces, so why was she acting like this? Of course, the Swiftblade didn't rely solely on the half-blood giant. He had something dangerous in his possession for critical moments.
If I use it wrong, it could backfire.
If used properly, dangerous tools are naturally lethal. When the half-blood giant didn't move even after saying to start, the Swiftblade spoke again.
Let's go.
It was an urging remark. Only after hearing this did the half-blood giant silently lift her shield. Enkrid watched the half-blood giant. The helmet covered her face. The visor had a single horizontal slit, through which only her eyes were barely visible. Her eyes were so thin and small that even the light in them couldn't be seen. But that didn't mean he couldn't sense the atmosphere. People often reveal their feelings through their attitude, even without speaking.
Do you not want to fight?
Enkrid asked, facing her. During their sparring, the half-blood giant unknowingly became excited, and Enkrid sensed it too. It was a vivid memory from long ago, before today's repetition. Some memories are not easily forgotten. It was different from forgetting Eden Molson's name.
Just fulfilling my duty.
The half-blood giant replied. Her husky voice echoed through the helmet. You could tell she was a woman, but her voice was characteristically rough. She soon raised her shield, a gray iron wall. Simultaneously setting her shield, she leaned forward and kicked the ground. The massive thigh muscles and ankle strength sent dirt flying as she propelled herself forward. The sound of her foot hitting the ground thundered through the air. At the same time, the half-blood giant's body charged at Enkrid. It was like a giant mountain moving. The half-blood giant originally named this technique avalanche. The shield, tilted obliquely, bore down on Enkrid. It was coming down with a crushing force. Enkrid instantly activated focus point. A strange experience of the surroundings slowing down, a technique he was now accustomed to using, consuming his concentration. Even in this immersed state, the speed of the shield bearing down on him was extraordinary and overwhelming. He judged that simply tilting his shield towards the sky as he charged would not suffice to deflect it. So, what should he do? If deflecting isn't possible, how about redirecting? Though his opponent had lost their enthusiasm, Enkrid hadn't. As he tried to move his body in response to the shield charge, the avalanche, he felt a murderous intent prick the back of his head. His sixth sense was activated, and his sense of evasion was naturally on high alert. The swift blade was up to something. Enkrid didn't mind.
It seems like it could be fun.
Because of this, a smile appeared on his face, and seeing this, the swift blade felt disgusted, almost to the point of madness. The previously restrained murderous intent surged in an instant.
Die.
The swift blade muttered to himself as he raised his hand to his belt and scattered something forward. It was the weapon that earned him his current nickname. A flexible sword made of thin wrought iron called a ribbon sword. It had been wrapped around his waist. What looked like a belt became a sword, extending straight forward. It was 1.5 times longer than a typical longsword. It also looked like a pointed iron whip. With the sound of the thin blade slicing through the air, the sword tip flew towards the back of Enkrid's head like a venomous snake. Enkrid was just about to raise his left hand against the shield, charging like an avalanche.
I keep thinking this is my fault.
Kreis muttered, and Rem glanced sideways at him upon hearing this.
Why?
The guidance map, and I left it exposed even though I knew.
Kreis had drawn and sold an internal map of the territory. The map could have been easier for them to navigate the territory, and he didn't use the Gilpin Guild to monitor them as he could have. They didn't want the guild members to die in droves against a skilled opponent. He had weighed the practical benefits. That nagging feeling was why he spoke up.
In that case, the battalion commander should take responsibility, right?
Finn said from behind. Next to her was Dunbachel, who seemed to have no thoughts at all. She simply asked out of curiosity.
Should we just leave him?
Rem reacted to this.
Well, if we don't leave him, will you sneak off to help? Are you sure you won't get caught?
Some beastmen are instinctively talented hunters, but Dunbachel was not one of them. She was a warrior, not a hunter.
I think I'll get caught.
Then why bring it up?
If he dies, I have no reason to stay here.
It was quite surprising to hear her reveal this so openly. Wasn't she saying she stayed here only because of Enkrid? Rem thought this as she kicked Dunbachel's calf with a lower kick. Thanks to her training, Dunbachel instinctively lifted her leg and blocked Rem's kick. There was impact but little pain. Hadn't they been exposed to savage violence all this time? Now she could handle this much.
Well done, Beast Girl, and drop the worries. Do you even have the time to worry?
Rem then harshly criticized Dunbachel's abilities.
A beast who can't even protect herself, worrying about someone? Who? The commander? The commander who recently gained awareness of will? You think you can beat that weirdo with the strange sword over there? Oh, you don't? But you're still going to fight? Did you leave your brain somewhere, or is it broken? Why are you carrying around a head that can't even be used as a helmet stand?
From calling her a beast to a helmet stand, it wasn't perfect rhythm, but it fit surprisingly well as a piece of poetry.
4.5 stars!
Kreis evaluated the poem by the poet Rem. Although worried, Kreis believed. Despite the burden of feeling responsible for the situation, he believed. If he had realized it sooner, he would have fortified the defenses more thoroughly. It was regret, but regret only needed to last for a moment. The reality was right before his eyes, and he had to face it. Since the event had already occurred, Kreis decided to believe. Wasn't it the commander himself who stepped in? Kreis still hadn't forgotten the back of the commander who saved him.
Such a commander.
Moreover, Enkrid's skills had recently improved to an unbelievable extent. He had advanced. He was progressing upward, so he believed. Most of all, just before retreating, when he saw the man with black hair standing under the blue sky, Kreis couldn't help but think of 2 words in his mind.
Knight.
What kind of person is called a knight? It's not just a term for those who are superior in martial prowess.
A knight is a protector.
One day, Enkrid had said, and if he said he would protect, then he would.
Anyway, damn it.
Rem grumbled as he stopped walking. They had moved quite a distance away. Worrying and watching are separate matters. It was a shame they were too far away to see properly. Especially the lazy bastard next to him seemed to think so even more. Recently, his attitude has been unusually enthusiastic. It was a rare sight for the usually lazy guy. As soon as Ragnar stopped, he turned around and got ready. To Rem, it looked like preparation. He didn't draw his sword, just stood there blankly, facing Enkrid's direction.
That's preparation.
He looked ready to charge immediately, if anything went wrong, though it seemed unlikely anything would.
Father will protect him,
Auden murmured beside him. It was a prayer, as usual. Jackson had already disappeared. He had turned into a wildcat as soon as they went out of sight. Esther didn't follow them. Today, the wizard who had turned into a human said,
I'm busy, don't bother me.
That was it. A beautiful woman with blue eyes and an air of mystique that marked her as a wizard said those words without a hint of worry, yet she still pretended to be a panther to outsiders.
She pretends not to care, but never leaves the commander's side.
Thinking this, Rem chuckled, and then he saw someone approaching hurriedly from the other side.
Is it true? They took a hostage?
It was Battalion Commander Marcus and a group of swift soldiers. Most were archers. Platoon leader Vengeance was also visible. When the incident happened, only a few, including Rem, moved, and then Marcus, after receiving the report, came with the archers.
Yes, but you don't need to worry. They said they'll kill the hostage if we approach, so we need to wait here.
Kreis stepped forward to answer. But for an issue like this, the battalion commander himself came. Well, since he's realized Will, he's now considered a high-level asset. Rem thought this as he watched the back of Kreis, who was stepping forward to speak. Then,
What kind of nonsense is that? Are you planning to trade a few hostages for the commander?
Eden Molson, who followed Marcus, stepped up. His hair was faded blonde, almost yellow. He stepped forward and shouted reprimandingly.
Guide me there immediately. I will go and punish him myself.
Since when did he care so much about the commander? Eden Molson was so agitated he was snorting. His puffing and panting were no different from usual. The only difference this time was that he was doing it for Enkrid, which was surprising.
Leave it be.
Rem had no choice but to step forward and speak.
What?
Eden Molson's eyebrows shot up. He had a knack for expressing anger with his face. He's a nuisance, but they couldn't kill the son of a noble again. That would be a real disaster. Rem exercised patience and spoke.
Leave it be, nothing will happen.
His tone was nearly certain. What kind of nonsense is this? Eden's face seemed to say. Rem once again exercised patience and spoke.
It's fine.
Rem was Enkrid's last sparring partner. While fighting him, he lost an axe, and at the same time he understood.
It's no threat.
The half-blood giant's skills aren't bad, but the swift blade is no match, and with the current Enkrid.
Fighting the half-blood giant and taking off that cunning guy's head is no big deal.
Moreover, hasn't the sly wildcat already made a move?
We just need to watch and then go to watch the show.
Even though Rem repeated this, Eden had no reason to back down.
Step aside, insolent barbarian.
Eden was about to take a step forward when he spat out his sharp words. A chilling, murderous intent slashed at Eden's neck. Eden thought he was dead. No, he almost died. It was Eden's bodyguard who prevented it.
That's enough. I told you to listen. Why do you keep pushing it, crossing the line and all that?
Rem grumbled as he spoke. Just now what was that? Eden touched his neck. Intimidation. Or something similar.
Did you always know how to use it?
The bodyguard asked. It was a question only Rem could understand. No, Odin understood as well. Ragnar seemed uninterested. He still had his body turned towards Enkrid. He didn't care who came from behind.
I saw it this time and tried to imitate it.
Can intimidation be imitated just by seeing it? The bodyguard thought the other was mocking him, but didn't draw his sword easily. It wasn't the time to cause internal strife.
The commander said he'd protect and save, so we should wait.
Rem said again. In that deadly atmosphere, Marcus kept his mouth shut. As a battalion commander, it was better to stay silent than to speak and possibly embarrass himself. It was indeed a shrewd decision.
Let's wait,
Marcus concluded. Eden Molson threw a few more fits, but that was the extent of it. They stopped and waited. They didn't have to wait long for news from the front. Although they were out of sight, this didn't apply to Rem. He could roughly grasp the situation just by watching the movements in the distance.
Let's go,
Rem said afterwards. He could see the situation was coming to an end. As soon as Jackson was out of the sight of the one called Swift Blade, he quickly slipped away. There was no need to give anyone a heads up.
Barbarian scum.
He noticed the presence of people whenever he disappeared. Although half of it was a deliberate sign left to be noticed, it still showed remarkable perception. There was no sound and no sign of his presence. As he moved through the bushes, the foliage shook no more than if a single bee had landed. Jackson utilized his skills to move, and avoiding the sight of that idiot Swiftblade was no challenge. He infiltrated the place where the hostages were held. Thanks to his quick movements after slipping out of sight,
This isn't something to do without a reward.
he hadn't taken on this task through the guild or personally. Was he working too hard? The brief question that arose inside quickly disappeared just as fast as it had come. His body moved on its own. Though it was an unfamiliar experience, it wasn't an unpleasant one. After all, he was currently a member of the Madmen platoon. He entered the abandoned shack.
How did you...
Bell recognized Jackson and asked.
Well,
Jackson gave a short reply and then cut the ropes binding Bell's wrists and ankles. As his dagger moved a few more times, the bound people quickly found their freedom. After that, Jackson led them to the back of the shack, where there was a small side room. Why were they heading to a dead end? While everyone expressed their confusion with their eyes, Bell, who had gone in first, asked,
Did you break through them forward?
Jackson pointed outside instead of answering. Instead of going through the door, he had cut through the back of the shack with his sword to create a new exit. He had essentially made a back door. The ease with which he cut the wall was thanks to his unique magical weapon, but there was no need to explain that. He had no obligation to answer such questions. Jackson had done his job.
get out.
He didn't expect the enemy to keep their promise, so he acted independently. It would help even their deranged commander to get these people out first. Now it was important not to get spotted. If he didn't want to end up killing the woman who had fallen into the hands of that despicable laughing man, it was the right move.
The commander promised to protect them.
He would help make sure that happened. Jackson felt it was quite out of character for him.
To save rather than to kill.
How unfitting for him, and without any compensation at that. But it was what his commander wanted. After rescuing all the hostages, he discreetly looked out the window to check the direction of the battle. The giant charged, and the ribbon sword moved like a snake, about to pierce from behind when Enkrid's body moved. Jackson saw him at that moment. Placing his left hand on the charging shield, he exploded the heart of great strength. He braced himself and pushed to the side. The force behind the shield was deflected to the side. Something then came crashing down vertically. It was the half-blood giant's sword swinging from above, a follow-up to the shield attack. Along with the sharp momentum from behind, Enkrid deflected the shield with his shoulder blade, blocked the end of the ribbon sword, and changed his stance by moving his right foot behind his left. A technique he learned from Odin to redirect attacks. As he moved, he swung his sword. When it met the descending blade, he deflected it by loosening his grip halfway. It was the fluid sword technique. He deflected everything. The results of his training shone through, and all this happened in the span of a single breath. Thunk, ting, clang, 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 clang. He deflected the shield, blocked the ribbon sword with his shoulder, and deflected the sword strike. Sparks flew, but since he had deflected everything, the impact was minimal. He had enough energy for the next move. Enkrid, having completed all these actions, kicked the half-blood giant's shin with his toes. The giant endured it, and then swung the shield like a bludgeon. At the same time, the ribbon sword once again targeted Enkrid's back. Enkrid calmly parried, blocked, and deflected the attack. It was hard to describe. The movements were basic but strangely flawless. How is that possible? Swiftblade was left puzzled, but the half-blood giant had no questions. She understood her opponent's movements as she watched.
Faster, stronger, and more flexible.
By moving faster and predicting the opponent's actions, with superior speed and strength, such movements were possible.
Ah.
Her techniques were being read. The half-blood giant almost got absorbed in the fight again, but she couldn't afford to.
Take this,
Swiftblade shouted from behind. A hostage, too terrified to scream, flew over Enkrid's head. It was a precisely aimed throwing weapon towards Enkrid. Since the hostage was alive, he couldn't simply deflect it, making it a very tricky projectile. The weapon, if one could call it that, was a wet, urine-soaked skirt. In the slowed-down moment, Enkrid's fixed gaze shifted sideways. He saw both the flying hostage and Swiftblade. The ribbon sword targeted his ankle like a snake. Enkrid's body spun completely. The half-blood giant had to swing either her shield or sword. Wasn't this the position for that? Why had she fought with Enkrid between them? It was for this moment, even though she had been manipulated by that cunning three-tonged demon, but her hand did not move. Enkrid responded to the approaching ribbon sword by kicking it away with the tip of his boot. His boot tip was cut, but his toes were intact. Then he gently caught the flying hostage. He took the weight on his knees and spun around to disperse the force. If this were a contest of catching flying humans, he would have won immediately.
Are you all right?
He asked afterward, but Jury, who made marmalade, still couldn't open her mouth. She was terribly shocked.
I can't do it.
The voice came from behind. It was the husky voice of the half-blood giant.
Is that so?
Enkrid glanced back and said nonchalantly,
Yeah, I can't do it.
She nodded. She didn't want this kind of fight. This wasn't an opponent she wanted to kill. Even though she had been ordered to kill, she couldn't bring herself to do it.
This isn't right.
Her mind said no, but her heart commanded otherwise. She knew it was wrong, but she couldn't bring herself to act. The half-blood giant gave up. Although no one knew, it was akin to giving up her life. It was an act no different from suicide. However,
I don't think I'll regret it.
The giant thought for a moment and withdrew her hand. She had no intention of fighting further.
You crazy bitch,
Swiftblade yelled. But it wasn't surprising, as he quickly ran back. He seemed to be heading towards the shack where the hostages were gathered. His speed was remarkable. Enkrid had a few ways to stop him. He could throw a dagger or charge and tackle him. Although it wouldn't perfectly stop him, it would buy some time, and with luck, it might prevent him from reaching the shack. But there was no need. Swiftblade flung open the shack door. Enkrid watched his actions calmly. He still remembered the movements of the ribbon sword from the previous confrontation.
The tip of my boot was cut.
He had intended to deflect after dodging, but the sword's tip had twisted at an unexpected angle at the last moment. How should he handle it next time? He came up with more than 7 ways. His accumulated experience had now blossomed and become second nature. Although Pell had fastened the last button, he had been doing this all along, fastening, sewing when he couldn't fasten, and even making new buttons when necessary. So, there was no reason to thank Pell.
Shit,
Swiftblade muttered. It was natural for him to curse. The shack was already empty.
Because Jackson is there.
Enkrid had expected this. Swiftblade hadn't.
Surprised.
Enkrid spoke as he began to lower the hostage. The half-blood giant extended her hand.
I won't harm her.
She wouldn't backstab him or torment the hostages. It was an obvious truth. Enkrid handed the woman to the half-blood giant. The giant gently set her on the ground. Enkrid walked towards Swiftblade, slowly, steadily. The rain had soaked the ground, producing a squelching sound with each step. Hearing his boots on the ground, Swiftblade turned his head.
Smuggling the hostages away, you liar.
Look at that. He's as shameless as Rem, stabbing from behind and then calling someone a liar.
You've got quite a thick skin.
Enkrid no longer had the luxury of smiling. Swiftblade assumed a stance, one hand gripping his sword, and the other holding the ribbon sword. Enkrid positioned his sword behind his head, his hand next to his right ear, the fatal strike stance of the middle sword technique, the wrath stance.
Cutting down a charging lion and slicing through solid steel.
As Ragnar's words came to mind, he naturally took the stance. If the ribbon sword was troublesome, what should he do? If it lunged again after being deflected, what then? He'd simply cut everything down.
There's nothing in this world that can't be cut. If I fail to cut, it's my inadequacy, or I lack the right equipment.
Those were Ragnar's words. A crazy lazybones, but his genius was undeniable. It was fortunate to have learned the swordmanship from him.
Hey, I'll definitely kill you,
Swiftblade said, letting out a ting as he dropped his intact sword. Kill me? How? Enkrid wasn't being arrogant, he was confident. Swiftblade was no match for him. He could have taken him on even before meeting Shepherd Pell. If he had been determined to kill, willing to get injured, he could have done it. Of course, that was before Swiftblade started using the ribbon sword. So now, he wouldn't lose. He could cut him. He would cut him. Repeated resolve planted a small seed in Enkrid's heart. It was an intangible energy learned through rejection. Though it hadn't sprouted yet, the seed was definitely planted.
Go ahead,
he said.
Yeah, you bastard.
Cornered, Swiftblade reached into his pocket. Tangum style, what was he going to throw? Enkrid's prediction was off. What came out of the pocket was a scroll. It was the first time Enkrid had ever seen such a tool, an artifact, a very rare item known as a scroll. It contained spells that could be activated when needed. Magic was mysterious, and spells were peculiar things.
Blow up.
With a shout, Swiftblade threw the scroll above Enkrid. Enkrid didn't recognize it as a scroll. It was only natural, since it was the first time he had seen such an item. However, his sixth sense warned him. Something was going to happen with that scroll, and it did. The scroll ignited, suddenly producing a massive fireball that descended. It wasn't as fast as an arrow, so it could be dodged. From the moment he took his stance, Enkrid had imprinted his surroundings in his mind.
If I dodge,
the fireball would fly backward. In its path were the half-blood giant and the urine-soaked woman. Even if the giant blocked with her shield, if it exploded, the rescued woman would die. Enkrid's thoughts accelerated. He quickly assessed everything and made a decision, pulling the best from the wrath stance. Pow! He charged towards the approaching fireball. His sword raised, his breath held, the sword in his grip, his body moving in balance with his feet. He channeled everything into one. There seemed to be a sound like a thud. Enkrid's body blurred and elongated, at least to Swiftblade's eyes.
Foolish bastard.
Swiftblade was confident of his victory. What kind of swordsman charges at a fireball with nothing but his body? If it hits, it's over. Severe injury, he wouldn't be able to stop him. Although the half-blood giant had backed off, she wouldn't interfere. The euphoria of victory, the thrill, the pent-up frustration from holding back the urge to kill for so long added to it. Having been cornered and then breaking free, Swiftblade's thoughts accelerated. There was a moment when their thoughts converged. It was when Enkrid's elongated body reached the fireball. The most rational action from the wrath stance emerged from Enkrid's fingertips. Pivoting on his left foot, he transferred the rotational force from his toes to his waist, and then to his hand, executing a middle sword technique diagonal slash. Everything happened in an instant. Jackson, watching from a tree beside the shack, furrowed his brow.
Is he cutting it?
The slash, and starting from the wrath stance, achieved a perfect strike. Following the diagonal path of the cut, the flying fireball split in two. The split fireball fell to the left and right of Enkrid. Boom, 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 explosions erupted. The wet soil quickly dried and scattered in all directions. A few stones turned into fiery embers, brushed past Enkrid's head and struck his back. Having exerted such effort, Enkrid was down on his left knee. He briefly recalled the moment he had cut through the fireball and stood up.
Well, it cut.
His remark was surprisingly understated for a moment of such accomplishment. He thought it would be good if it worked, and if not, he'd get a little burned. His face might have been half burned, but for Enkrid there was something more important than his appearance. It was this moment of not giving up and not retreating. Thus Enkrid cut through the spell.